The morning started like any other Tuesday for most people on Earth. Coffee brewing, children getting ready for school, and the usual rush of traffic in cities around the world. Then everything changed in a single moment. At exactly 11:47 a.m. Eastern Time, the sky darkened over New York City. People stopped walking and looked up. A massive shadow was moving across the sun, but it was not a cloud. It was something else entirely. The object was enormous, bigger than any building humans had ever made. Its surface looked like crystal, catching the sunlight and throwing rainbow colors across the city streets below. The ship hung in the air without making any sound, as if it weighed nothing at all. Jake Martinez was having lunch at his desk in the Pentagon when every phone in. The building started ringing at once. He pushed his sandwich aside and answered his phone. "Commander Martinez, you need to get to the Situation Room right now," said the voice on the other end. "We have a problem." Jake had been in the military for 15 years. He had seen combat in 3 different countries and had worked his way up to become one of the Pentagon's top strategic advisors. But nothing had prepared him for what he saw when he walked into the Situation Room. The wall of monitors showed feeds from around the world. London, Tokyo, Moscow, Los Angeles, Sydney, and dozens of other major cities. Above each city hung a crystal ship just like the one over New York. They were all the same size, all hanging at the same height, all perfectly silent. "How many?" Jake asked. 47 ships over major population centers," answered Colonel Lisa Park, who was coordinating the response. "They appeared simultaneously. No warning, no detection by our radar systems. They just materialized." Jake studied the images. The ships were beautiful in a way that made him uncomfortable. They looked too perfect, too clean. Human technology was always a bit rough around the edges, but these ships looked like they had been grown rather than built. "Have they made contact?" he asked. "That's the strange part," Lisa said. "They're not responding to any of our attempts to communicate, but they're also not doing anything aggressive. They're just sitting there." President Rodriguez had called an emergency meeting with world leaders. Jake could see her on one of the screens, talking rapidly with the Secretary of Defense. The president looked calm, but Jake could see the tension in her shoulders. Dr. Amy Collins arrived at the Pentagon 20 minutes later. She was a scientist who studied the possibility of alien life, and she had written several papers about what first contact might look like. The government had brought her in as an advisor 2 years ago, just in case something like this ever happened. "This is not how we expected it to go," Amy said as she looked at the monitors. "Every model we created suggested that aliens would try to communicate immediately. These ships have been here for almost an hour, and they haven't said anything." Jake was about to respond when every screen in the room suddenly went black. Then words appeared in bright white letters on each monitor. The same words were appearing on every television, computer screen, and phone display around the world. "We are the keepers of the galactic peace. We have come to offer Earth protection." The message stayed on the screens for exactly 60 seconds, then disappeared. Regular programming returned as if nothing had happened. "That was in perfect English," Amy said. "No accent, no strange grammar. They understand our language better than most humans do." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "How long have they been watching us?" Before anyone could answer, the screens went black again. This time, a new message appeared. "We will send representatives to speak with your leaders. Prepare a location for diplomatic meeting. We come in peace." The message lasted for 30 seconds. Then the screens returned to normal. Jake looked around the room at the faces of his colleagues. Everyone was thinking the same thing, but no one wanted to say it out loud. The aliens had been watching Earth for a long time. They knew human languages, they knew where the major cities were, and they knew how human technology worked. This was not a chance encounter. This was planned. President Rodriguez appeared on the main screen. "I want recommendations for a meeting location within 2 hours," she said. "And I want our best people there. This is the most important day in human history." Jake spent the next hour reviewing everything they knew about the ships. The military had tried every scanning method they could think of, but the ships seemed to absorb or deflect all attempts to study them. They were like holes in space, perfectly visible but impossible to understand. Amy had been working on a different problem. "Commander Martinez," she said, "I think there's something we need to discuss." The message said they came to offer protection. But they didn't say protection from what? Jake looked at her. "What do you mean?" "Think about it," Amy said. "If someone came to your house and said they wanted to protect you, your first question would be from what?" But these aliens didn't explain the threat. They just said they would protect us. "Maybe they'll explain when they meet with our leaders," Jake suggested. Amy shook her head. "That's not how communication works. If there was a real threat, they would have led with that. They would have said, 'There is danger coming and we can help you.' Instead, they just offered protection without explaining why we need it." The meeting location was set for the United Nations building in New York. The president would represent the United States, while other world leaders would attend by video link. Jake would be there as military advisor, and Amy would be the science consultant. 2 hours after the first message, a smaller ship separated from the main vessel over New York. It was the same crystal material, but shaped like a teardrop. It moved slowly toward the UN building, stopping to hover directly above the main entrance. Jake watched from the security room as the ship landed in the plaza in front of the building. It touched down without making any sound, as if it were made of air. Then a section of the crystal hull simply dissolved, creating a doorway. 3 figures emerged from the ship. They were tall, much taller than humans, and their skin seemed to shift between silver and blue. They wore no clothes, but their bodies were covered in patterns that looked like circuit boards made of light. Their heads were larger than human heads, and their eyes were twice the normal size. "They're beautiful," Amy whispered. Jake had to agree. The aliens moved with a grace that seemed impossible. They walked toward the UN building as if they were floating just above the ground. The late alien stopped at the entrance and looked directly at the security camera. When it spoke, its voice came through the building's communication system. "We are the Zephyrians. We are here to help your species. May we enter?" President Rodriguez gave the approval, and the aliens were escorted to the main assembly hall. Jake and Amy watched from the security room as world leaders filled the screens around the hall. The lead Zephyrian stood at the podium and began to speak. Its voice was perfectly human, with no accent or strange pronunciation. "People of Earth," it said, "your world sits at a dangerous crossroads in space. There are threats in the darkness between stars that you cannot imagine. We have come to offer you membership in our protective alliance. Accept our offer and you will be safe." President Rodriguez leaned forward. "Safe from what, exactly?" The Zephyrian paused. Its large eyes blinked slowly, and Jake noticed that the patterns on its skin seemed to pulse with a different rhythm. "From the dangers that lurk in the dark between stars," the alien repeated. "Your species is young and vulnerable. Trust us. We have protected many worlds." Jake felt that chill again. The alien had not answered the question. It had just repeated the same vague warning. "Can you be more specific about these threats?" asked the president. The Zephyrian's head tilted slightly. "There are things in the universe that humans are not ready to understand. Accept our protection, and you will not need to worry about such things." Amy was taking notes furiously. Jake could see her writing question marks next to almost everything the alien said. The meeting continued for another hour, but the pattern never changed. Every specific question was met with a vague answer. Every request for details was deflected. With reassurances about safety. As the aliens returned to their ship, Jake realized that they had learned almost nothing about the supposed threat. They only knew that the Zephyrians wanted to protect Earth from something they refused to describe. "This doesn't feel right," Amy said as they watched the crystal ship rise into the sky. Jake nodded. "No, it doesn't. But the question is, what are we going to do about it?" 3 weeks had passed since the Zephyrians arrived, and Jake Martinez was getting more frustrated with each passing day. The aliens had set up what they called diplomatic meetings, but Jake felt like he was being interrogated by someone who refused to answer any real questions. The meetings took place every other day at the United Nations building. The same three Zephyrians would arrive in their silent crystal ship, walk into the assembly hall, and spend 2 hours giving vague answers to direct questions. Jake had started keeping a notebook of all the things they refused to explain. Doctor. Amy Collins sat across from him in the Pentagon briefing room, reading through her own notes. She had been studying the Zephyrians for 3 weeks, and her conclusions were troubling. "They're not acting like any alien species we theorized about," Amy said. "Every model we created suggested that aliens would want to share information, especially about threats. But these beings act like they're hiding something." Jake flipped through his notebook. "Yesterday I asked them to describe just one of these cosmic dangers they keep talking about. The leader said it would be like trying to explain color to a blind person. But that's not an answer, that's an excuse." Captain Ben Thompson knocked on the door and entered the room. He was in charge of Earth's Space Reconnaissance Division, and he had been working on a special project since the aliens arrived. "Commander Martinez, Dr. Collins," Ben said, "I have something you need to see. It's about the Zephyrian communications." Jake looked up from his notebook. "What kind of communications?" "We've been monitoring all radio frequencies since they arrived," Ben explained. "At first, we thought they were only talking to us. But 3 days ago, we detected something else." Ben pulled out a tablet and showed them a series of wave patterns. "These are the signals going between the Zephyrian ships, but look at this." He pointed to a different pattern. "This signal is going somewhere else entirely. It's aimed at deep space." Amy leaned forward to study the screen. "How deep?" "At least 50 light years out," Ben said. "And it's not random. They're sending regular reports to whoever is out there." Jake felt that familiar chill. "Reports about what?" "That's what we're trying to figure out," Ben said. "We can't decode the signals, but the timing is interesting. They send these deep space messages right after each diplomatic meeting." Amy was quiet for a moment, then she looked at Jake. "Commander, I think we need to consider an uncomfortable possibility." "What kind of possibility?" "What if they're not here to protect us from something else?" Amy said slowly. "What if they're here to protect something else from us?" Jake stared at her. The idea was so simple that he wondered why none of them had thought of it before. Ben nodded. "That would explain the reports. They're not telling their bosses about threats to Earth. They're telling them about the threat that Earth might pose." Before Jake could respond, his phone rang. The caller ID showed Agent Kate Walker from the Intelligence Services. Kate had been working on a separate investigation into the Zephyrians. "Commander Martinez," Kate said, "I need to meet with you immediately. I've found something that changes everything." An hour later, Kate Walker sat in the same briefing room with a laptop and a stack of printed documents. She was a small woman, with sharp eyes who had spent her career finding patterns that other people missed. "I've been analyzing historical data from our space telescopes," Kate said, "looking for any signs of Zephyrian activity before they arrived here." She opened her laptop and showed them a star map. "Over the past 50 years, we've detected similar crystal ship signatures in 17 different solar systems. At first, we thought they were just unusual mineral formations on asteroids." Jake looked at the map. "But they weren't asteroids." "No," Kate said. "They were ships, Zephyrian ships. And here's the disturbing part." She clicked to a different screen. "I traced what happened to the civilizations in those systems." The screen showed a timeline with 17 different star systems marked. Each system had a date when the crystal ships appeared and another date a few years later. "What am I looking at?" Amy asked. "The second date is when each civilization went silent," Kate explained. "In every single case, the civilization that was supposedly being protected stopped all radio transmissions within 10 years of the Zephyrians arriving." Ben studied the timeline. That could mean they were destroyed by whatever threat the Zephyrians were protecting them from. Kate shook her head. "I thought so too until I looked closer. Look at this." She showed them a detailed analysis of one star system. "This is the Kepler 442 system. The Zephyrians arrived there 12 years ago. The civilization went silent. 8 years ago? But the planet is still there, the cities are still there, and there's still energy signatures consistent with a living population. So what happened to them? Jake asked. I think they're still alive, Kate said. But they're not allowed to communicate with the outside universe. The room was quiet for a long moment. Jake looked at his colleagues and saw the same realization. In their eyes, the Zephyrians were not protectors. They were jailers, but why? Amy asked. Why would they want to isolate civilizations? Kate pulled out another document. I've been analyzing the pattern of worlds they've targeted. They're not random. Every single civilization was at a specific point in their development when the Zephyrians arrived. She showed them a chart comparing the technological levels of the 17 civilizations. Every single one was on the verge of developing faster than light travel. Every single one was about to become a spacefaring species. Jake felt the pieces clicking into place. They're not protecting us from something out there. They're protecting the galaxy from us. The next diplomatic meeting was scheduled for the following morning. Jake, Amy, Ben, and Kate met beforehand to plan their approach. They had decided to confront the Zephyrians directly, but they knew they had to be careful. We can't let them know that we've figured out their real purpose, Jake said. If they realize we know, they might decide to skip the diplomatic phase. Amy had prepared a list of questions designed to get the Zephyrians to reveal their true intentions. I'm going to ask them about the other civilizations they've protected. If they're really trying to help, they should be proud to talk about their successes. The meeting started like all the others. The three Zephyrians entered the assembly hall and took their positions at the podium. The lead alien, who had never given them a name, began with the usual greeting. People of Earth, we are here to discuss your acceptance of our protection. Have your leaders reached a decision? President Rodriguez looked directly at the alien. We have more questions first. Can you tell us about the other civilizations you've protected? The Zephyrian's skin patterns pulsed slightly faster. We have successfully protected many worlds from the dangers of space. Can you give us specific examples? Amy asked from her seat in the observer section. The details are not important, the alien replied. What matters is that they are safe. Ben leaned forward. How do we know they're safe if we can't communicate with them? The Zephyrian turned to look at him. Communication with protected worlds is not necessary. Safety is more important than communication. Jake felt his heart rate increase. The alien had just admitted that the protected worlds couldn't communicate with the outside universe. Kate Walker had been waiting for her moment. What exactly are you protecting us from? The Zephyrian's large eyes focused on her. From the chaos that spreads when civilizations expand too quickly into space. From the conflicts that arise when species encounter each other without proper preparation. So you're protecting us from other species? President Rodriguez asked. We are protecting the galaxy from the instability that young civilizations create. The alien said. The words hung in the air like a confession. Jake looked around the room and saw that everyone had understood the implications. Amy stood up. You're not protecting us from external threats. You're containing us because you think we're dangerous. The Zephyrian skin patterns shifted to a deeper blue. Your species is violent and unpredictable. Left unchecked, you would spread across the galaxy and disrupt the peace that has existed for thousands of years? Whose peace? Jake asked, standing up as well. The peace maintained by those who understand the proper order of things, the alien replied. Your species advances too quickly. You ask too many questions. You refuse to accept the wisdom of those who came before you. President Rodriguez had heard enough. So your offer of protection is actually an offer of imprisonment? The Zephyrian tilted its head. You will be safe. Your world will be preserved. Your people will be allowed to live in peace. What more could you want? Freedom, Jake said simply. The alien's patterns pulsed with what might have been confusion. Freedom to do what? To destroy yourselves through war? To spread your chaos to other worlds? To upset the balance that has kept the galaxy stable? Freedom to make our own choices. Amy said, freedom to explore? to learn, to grow, freedom to make mistakes and learn from them. The Zephyrian looked at each of them in turn. You do not understand. The galaxy is not a place for endless expansion and experimentation. There must be order, there must be control. According to who? Ben asked. According to those who have the wisdom to see the larger picture, the alien replied. Your species is like a child playing with fire. The emergency meeting was called for 6 in the morning. Jake Martinez had barely slept since the confrontation with the Zephyrians the day before. He knew that time was running out and humanity needed answers fast. Dr. Amy Collins looked exhausted. As she entered the Pentagon briefing room, she had been working all night in her laboratory, studying every piece of data they had collected about the Zephyrian ships. Her hair was messy and her clothes were wrinkled, but her eyes were bright with discovery. I think I know what their ships are really designed for, Amy said without any greeting. She pulled out her tablet and showed Jake a series of technical diagrams. These are not warships. They're not even transport vessels in the traditional sense. Jake looked at the diagrams, but the technical details were beyond him. What are they then? Prison ships, Amy said simply. Every system, every component, every energy signature points to one purpose. These ships are designed to create and maintain containment fields. Captain Ben Thompson arrived with Agent Kate Walker right behind him. Both of them looked like they had been working through the night as well. Commander Martinez, Ben said. We've got a problem. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected movement in the Zephyrian fleet. They're repositioning themselves. Kate Walker spread out a series of photographs on the table. These are satellite images from the past 6 hours. The ships that were hovering over major cities are now moving to specific coordinates around the planet. Jake studied the images. The crystal ships were no longer randomly positioned over population centers. They were forming a pattern, like points on a geometric shape that surrounded the entire Earth. It's a containment grid, Amy said, looking at the photos. They're setting up to trap the entire planet. Ben nodded grimly. And there's more. We've been monitoring their communications, and the signals to deep space have increased dramatically. They're not just sending reports anymore. They're receiving detailed instructions. Jake felt the familiar chill run down his spine. Instructions for what? We think they're being told to move to the next phase, Kate said. The diplomatic phase is over. They're preparing to implement containment whether we agree or not. Amy pulled up another screen on her tablet. I've been analyzing the energy signatures from the ships. If they activate their containment system, it will create a barrier around the entire planet. Nothing will be able to get in or out. How long do we have? Jake asked. Ben checked his watch. Based on their current positioning rate, they'll be in optimal configuration within 18 hours. Jake looked around the room at his colleagues. These were some of the smartest people on Earth, and they all looked scared. But he also saw something else in their eyes, determination. What do we need to do? He asked. Amy closed her tablet. We need to understand their technology better. And we need to find a way to counter it. Kate Walker had been quiet during the technical discussion, but now she spoke up. There's something else we need to consider. The other civilizations they've imprisoned. If we can find a way to break their containment system, we might be able to free more than just Earth. Ben nodded. I've been thinking about that too. The signals they're sending to deep space are going to a specific location. If we can trace that location, we might find their command center. Jake felt a spark of hope. And if we can reach their command center, we can shut down their entire prison network, Amy finished. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Amy worked with a team of physicists to analyze the Zephyrian technology. Ben coordinated with space agencies around the world to track the alien ships. Kate worked with intelligence services to map the Zephyrian communication network. Jake spent his time coordinating between the different teams and briefing world leaders on their progress. President Rodriguez had declared a global emergency, and every nation on Earth was contributing resources to the effort. At noon, Amy made a breakthrough. She burst into the command center where Jake was coordinating the global response. Commander, Martinez, I think I've figured out how their containment fields work, she said breathlessly. They create a distortion in space-time that forms a barrier? Nothing can pass through because the space itself becomes impassable. Jake looked up from his communications console. Can we break through it? Not from the outside, Amy said. But theoretically, we could create a counter-distortion from the inside. If we can generate the right kind of energy field, we might be able to neutralize their containment system. Ben Thompson appeared at Jake's shoulder. Commander, we've got the location of their command signal. It's coming from a point about 200 million kilometers from Earth, right where our deep space telescopes detected unusual activity last month. Kate Walker joined them at the console. I've been analyzing their communication patterns. The command ship isn't just controlling our containment field. It's coordinating the imprisonment of dozens of worlds across the galaxy. Jake felt pieces of a plan forming in his mind. So if we can reach their command ship ... we can free every imprisoned civilization in their network, Kate said. Amy was already working on her tablet again. The counter-distortion generators would need to be built into spacecraft. We'd need ships that could operate inside the containment field and then break through to reach their command center. Ben looked skeptical. We don't have any ships that could make that journey. The nearest we have to deep space capability is the International Space Station, and that's not designed for interplanetary travel. Jake smiled for the first time in days. What if I told you that might not be a problem? He led them to a classified section of the Pentagon that most people didn't know existed. Behind a series of security doors was a hangar that contained something that officially didn't exist. We call it the Experimental Deep Space Program, Jake said as they entered the hangar. It's been in development for 5 years, ever since. We started detecting unusual activity in nearby star systems. The hangar contained 3 spacecraft unlike anything the public had ever seen. They were sleek, angular, and built with technology that was decades ahead of anything NASA had revealed. These are beautiful, Amy said, walking around one of the ships. But will they work? Ben was already examining the technical specifications posted on the wall. Commander, these ships are designed for exactly the kind of mission we're talking about. They have the range, the speed, and the defensive capabilities we'd need. Kate was studying the specifications as well. But there's only 3 of them. And we'd need crews that are trained for deep space combat? Jake nodded. We've been training crews in secret for 2 years, just in case something like this happened. Amy looked up from her tablet. If we can install my counter-distortion generators on these ships, we might actually have a chance. The next 6 hours were spent in frantic preparation. Amy and her team worked to build the counter-distortion generators, then coordinated with the secret space program to prepare the ships for launch. Kate worked with intelligence services around the world to map the Zephyrian command network. Jake spent his time selecting the crews for the mission. He knew that this would be a one-way trip for most of them. The Zephyrian command ship was too far away for the experimental ships to make a round trip. At 6 in the evening, Amy announced that the counter-distortion generators were ready. Ben reported that the ships were fueled and ready for launch. Kate had identified the exact location of the Zephyrian command ship, but then Ben received a message that changed everything. Commander Martinez, he said, his face pale, we've got a problem. The Zephyrian ships have accelerated their timeline. They're beginning to activate the containment field now. Jake looked at the monitors showing their crystal ships around Earth. The ships were beginning to glow with an eerie blue light. How long do we have? Jake asked. Maybe 2 hours before the containment field is fully active. Ben replied. Amy was already running calculations on her tablet. If we launch now, we can get through the containment field before it's fully formed, but we'll only have one chance. Kate looked at the mission plans. And if we fail, Earth will be trapped forever. Jake looked around the room at his colleagues. These people had become his friends over the past few weeks, and he knew that some of them would not be coming back from this mission. Are we ready? He asked. Amy nodded. The counter-distortion generators are installed and tested. Ben checked his watch. The ships are ready for immediate launch. Kate handed him a datapad. I've uploaded everything we know about the Zephyrian command network to the ship computers. Jake took the datapad and headed toward the hangar. Then let's go free some civilizations. As they walked toward the experimental ships, Jake could see the blue glow from the Zephyrian vessels getting brighter through the hangar windows. The containment field was beginning to form, and once it was complete, nothing would be able to leave Earth. But Jake Martinez had spent his entire career preparing for impossible missions. And he had learned that the most important thing was not whether a mission was possible, but whether it was necessary. Freeing Earth was necessary, freeing the galaxy was necessary, and sometimes necessity was enough to make the impossible happen. The 3 experimental ships launched into the darkening sky, carrying humanity's. Jake Martinez watched through the cockpit window as the 3 experimental ships broke through Earth's atmosphere. Behind them, the blue glow from the Zephyrian vessels was getting brighter by the minute. The containment field was almost ready. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the Zephyrian fleet," said Lieutenant Maria Santos, who was operating the communication system in Jake's ship. Jake put on his headset. The voice that came through was the same one they had heard in the diplomatic meetings, but now it sounded different. Cold and final. "Human vessels, you will return to your planet immediately," the Zephyrian leader said. "Your launch is unauthorized and dangerous." Jake keyed his microphone. "This is Commander Martinez of the Earth Defense Force. We are exercising our right to free travel in space." There was a pause before the alien responded. "You have no rights beyond your planetary surface. Return now, or face the consequences." "What consequences?" Jake asked, but the communication channel went dead. Dr. Amy Collins was monitoring the containment field from the second ship. "Commander Martinez, they're accelerating the field activation. We have maybe 30 minutes before. It's fully formed." Captain Ben Thompson piloted the third ship and was tracking the Zephyrian command signals. "I've got a lock on their command ship location. It's definitely 200 million kilometers out, just past Mars orbit." Jake checked his instruments. The experimental ships were fast, but not fast enough to reach the command ship in 30 minutes. They needed more time. "Amy, are your counter-distortion generators ready?" he asked. "Ready and standing by," Amy replied. "But I need to warn you, Commander. Once I activate them, the Zephyrians will know exactly what we're doing. We'll lose any element of surprise." Jake made the decision that would change everything. "Do it. We need to buy ourselves time." Amy activated the counter-distortion generators on all 3 ships. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The blue glow from the Zephyrian containment field flickered and began to fade. "It's working," Amy said excitedly. "The field is destabilizing." But their victory was short-lived. Within minutes, the Zephyrian ships began moving. The crystal vessels that had been positioned around Earth started converging on the 3 human ships. "They're coming after us," Ben reported, "and they're fast." Jake could see the alien ships approaching on his radar screen. They moved with impossible grace, accelerating without any visible propulsion system. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," Jake ordered. "Stay close together and keep heading for the command ship location." The chase that followed was unlike anything in human military history. The Zephyrian ships moved like liquid mercury, flowing around the human vessels and trying to box them in. But the experimental ships had been designed by humans, and humans understood something that the aliens did not. Sometimes the best strategy was to be unpredictable. Ben Thompson had grown up flying crop dusters on his family farm in Iowa. He knew how to make aircraft do things that engineers said were impossible. He put that knowledge to work now, spinning his ship in directions that defied physics and slipping through gaps in the alien formation that should not have existed. Amy Collins had never been a pilot, but she understood the science behind the ship systems better than anyone. She used the counter-distortion generators not just as weapons, but as tools to create pockets of altered space that confused the Zephyrian sensors. Jake Martinez had been in combat before, but never in space. He relied on his instincts and his understanding of tactics to keep the small human fleet together and moving toward their target. The Zephyrians were faster and more maneuverable. But they were also predictable. They moved in perfect formations and followed logical attack patterns. The humans moved like chaos itself, breaking every rule of space combat that the aliens understood. Commander, I'm detecting massive energy buildup from the Zephyrian fleet around Earth. Maria Santos reported from her position at the communications station. Jake looked back toward Earth, which was now just a small blue dot behind them. The crystal ships were glowing brighter than ever. They're not chasing us anymore, Ben observed. They're going back to Earth. Amy checked her instruments. The containment field is reactivating. They've modified it to compensate for our counter-distortion technology. Jake realized what was happening. The Zephyrians had decided that stopping the human ships was less important than completing the containment of Earth. They were willing to let 3 ships escape if it meant trapping the entire planet. How long before the field is permanent? Jake asked. Maybe 20 minutes, Amy replied. And once it's fully active, nothing will be able to break through it, not even our technology. Jake made another decision. Ben, Amy, change of plans. We're splitting up. Commander? Ben asked. 1 ship continues to the command ship, Jake explained. The other 2 return to Earth and try to stop the containment field. Amy understood immediately. If we can't stop the field from the inside, we need to hit their command center from the outside. Ben was already changing course. I'll take the run at the command ship. My ship has the longest range. No, Jake said. I'm going to the command ship. You and Amy go back to Earth. You understand their technology better than I do. Before anyone could argue, the Zephyrian pursuit ships returned. But this time, they were not trying to capture the human vessels. They were trying to destroy them. Beams of crystalline energy lanced out from the alien ships, barely missing Jake's cockpit. The humans scattered, using every trick they knew to avoid the deadly fire. They've stopped playing games, Amy said. As she spun her ship around an energy beam that would have cut it in half, Ben was already heading back toward Earth, his ship weaving between the alien vessels like a needle through fabric. I'll clear a path for you, Dr. Collins. Amy followed. Ben's ship, using his wake to slip past the Zephyrian formation. But Jake continued on his original course, heading toward the distant command ship. The aliens seemed confused by the split. Half of them followed Ben and Amy back toward Earth, while the others continued to pursue Jake. Jake found himself alone in the darkness of space, with 3 Zephyrian ships closing in on him. His experimental ship was fast, but not fast enough to outrun the aliens indefinitely. But Jake had one advantage that the Zephyrians did not understand. He was not trying to escape. He was trying to reach their command ship, and he was willing to sacrifice everything to get there. Jake cut his main engines and activated the ship's emergency systems. The experimental vessel had been designed with a secret weapon that even Ben and Amy did not know about. It could overload its power core to create a massive energy burst. The burst would destroy Jake's ship, but it would also damage anything within 100,000 kilometers. More importantly, it would disrupt the Zephyrian control signals for several minutes. As the alien ships closed in for the kill, Jake armed the overload system. But before he could activate it, something unexpected happened. Commander Martinez, this is Agent Kate Walker. Do you copy? Jake nearly fell out of his pilot seat. Kate, how are you on this channel? I'm not on Earth, Commander, Kate replied. I'm about 50,000 kilometers from your position. Jake checked his sensors and found a 4th human ship approaching his location. It was identical to the 3 experimental vessels, but Jake had been told there were only 3. There were actually 4 ships, Kate explained as her vessel joined Jake's. The 4th one was kept secret even from you. I've been following you since you launched? The Zephyrian pursuit ships were now facing 2 human vessels instead of 1. Jake could see them changing their attack formation to deal with the new threat. Kate, what are you doing out here? Jake asked. The same thing you are, Kate replied. Going to shut down their command ship, but I've got something you don't have. What's that? The location of every imprisoned civilization in the galaxy, Kate said, and the access codes to free them all? Jake stared at his communication display. How did you get access codes? I've been working on that for 3 weeks, Kate. explained. The Zephyrians are very organized, but they're also very predictable. Their command codes follow a mathematical pattern. The alien ships opened fire again, but now they were facing two targets that were working together. Jake and Kate flew there. Ships in a complex dance, using each other's movements to confuse the Zephyrian targeting systems. Commander, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the direction of Earth, Maria Santos reported. Jake looked back toward his home planet. Even at this distance, he could see the blue glow of the containment field reaching its final phase. Ben and Amy are running out of time, Jake said. Kate's voice was grim. So are we. The command ship has detected us. It's powering up its defenses. Jake could see their target now, a massive crystal structure that dwarfed even the largest Zephyrian. Ships around Earth, it hung in space like a malevolent star, pulsing with energy. Kate, how many civilizations are connected to that thing? 47 imprisoned worlds, Kate replied, including Earth if we don't stop this. Jake looked at the command ship, then back toward Earth, then at the three Zephyrian ships that were still pursuing them. The odds were impossible. The mission was insane. And failure meant the enslavement of his entire species, but Jake Martinez had learned something important about humans during the past few weeks. Jake Martinez looked at the massive Zephyrian command ship ahead of him and made a decision that would change the galaxy forever. The crystal structure was enormous, easily 10 times larger than anything humans had ever built. It pulsed with energy, coordinating the imprisonment of dozens of worlds across space. Kate, here's what we're going to do, Jake said over the communication channel. I'm going to ram the command ship. Commander, that's suicide, Agent Kate Walker replied. From her ship, your vessel won't even scratch something that size. I'm not trying to destroy it, Jake explained. I'm trying to get inside it, Kate understood immediately. The counter-distortion generators, if you can get them inside their command structure. Exactly. Jake said, you use your access codes to free the imprisoned worlds while I create chaos from the inside. The three Zephyrian pursuit ships were closing in fast, their crystal hulls glowing with weapon energy. Jake had maybe 2 minutes before they would be in firing range. What about those ships behind us? Kate asked. Jake smiled grimly. Leave them to me. He activated his ship's emergency beacon, the same signal that Earth ships used when they were in distress. But Jake modified the signal, programming it with a message that no alien would expect. The message was simple. This is how humans say hello. Then Jake did something that violated every rule of space combat. Instead of trying to escape or fight the pursuing ships, he turned around and flew directly at them. The Zephyrians were so surprised by this maneuver that they hesitated for a crucial moment. In that moment, Jake flew between their ships and activated every weapon system his experimental vessel had. The human ship was not designed for combat, but it had been built by humans. And humans had a talent for turning peaceful tools into weapons when necessary. Jake used his navigation thrusters as projectile weapons, his communication array as an energy disruptor, and his life support system as a smokescreen. The Zephyrian ships found themselves flying blind through a cloud of debris and electromagnetic interference, while Jake's ship slipped past them toward the command ship. That was insane, Kate said. That was human, Jake replied. Meanwhile, back at Earth, Dr. Amy Collins and Captain Ben Thompson were fighting their own desperate battle. The containment field around Earth was almost complete, forming a barrier that would trap the planet forever. Amy had managed to get her ship close to one of the main Zephyrian vessels, but the counter-distortion generators were not powerful enough to break through the field from the outside. Ben, I need you to link your ship's power system to mine, Amy said. If we combine our energy output, we might be able to create a big enough disruption. Ben maneuvered his ship until it was flying just meters away from Amy's vessel. Linking power systems now, he said. The two ships flew in perfect formation, their hulls almost touching. When Ben activated the power link, both ships began to glow with the same blue energy as the Zephyrian containment field. It's working, Amy said. The field is destabilizing. But the Zephyrians were not going to let two human ships destroy their carefully planned prison. 6 crystal vessels converged on Amy and Ben's position, their weapons charging. "Dr. Collins, we've got company," Ben said. Amy looked at her instruments. The counter-distortion effect was working, but it needed more time to break through the containment field completely. "Keep the power link active," she said. "I'll handle the Zephyrians." Amy did something that her engineering professors would have said was impossible. She reversed the polarity of her counter-distortion generators and used them to create a pocket of unstable space around the two human ships. The Zephyrian energy beams passed right through the pocket without hitting anything, because the space itself was constantly shifting. The aliens found themselves shooting at targets that were there one moment and gone the next. Back at the command ship, Jake had managed to get past the outer defenses. The massive crystal structure loomed in front of him like a small moon. He could see docking bays and energy conduits, but no obvious way inside. "Kate, I'm going to need that distraction now," Jake said. Kate's ship appeared on the other side of the command ship, broadcasting the access codes she had discovered. "Beginning liberation sequence for all imprisoned worlds," she announced. The effect was immediate. Across the galaxy, the containment fields around 47 different planets began to flicker and weaken. Civilizations that had been silent for years suddenly came back to life. The Zephyrian command ship was thrown into chaos as it tried to maintain control of dozens of failing prison systems. Jake used this confusion to find his opening. He spotted a large energy conduit that led directly into the heart of the command ship. It was designed for energy flow, not for spacecraft, but Jake had learned that humans were very good at using things in ways they were not designed for. Jake aimed his ship at the conduit and activated his forward thrusters. The experimental vessel shot into the crystal structure like a bullet into the barrel of a gun. The inside of the Zephyrian command ship was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. Crystalline corridors stretched in all directions, pulsing with energy. The walls were covered with displays showing the status of imprisoned worlds across the galaxy. Jake could see that Kate's liberation codes were working. World after world was breaking free from Zephyrian control. But the system was fighting back, trying to re-establish the prison fields. Jake found the central control chamber and crashed his ship directly into it. The impact threw him against his restraints, but the ship's hull held together. Jake grabbed the portable counter-distortion generator that Amy had given him and ran toward the Zephyrian control systems. The chamber was filled with tall, blue-skinned aliens who were frantically trying to regain control of their prison network. When they saw Jake, they moved to stop him. "You cannot do this," one of them said in perfect English. "You do not understand the consequences." Jake activated the counter-distortion generator and placed it directly on the main control console. "Then maybe you should have explained them instead of trying to cage us." The device began to pulse with energy, sending waves of disruption through the entire command ship. The displays showing imprisoned worlds began to flicker and go dark. "You are destroying the order we have maintained for thousands of years," the Zephyrian leader said. "Good," Jake replied. The counter-distortion generator reached critical power. Jake could feel the entire command ship beginning to shake as its control systems failed one by one. Back at Earth, Amy and Ben felt the effect immediately. The containment field around their planet suddenly collapsed, leaving Earth free once again. "The field is down," Amy reported. "All Zephyrian ships are retreating." Across the galaxy, the same thing was happening. 47 worlds that had been trapped in crystal prisons suddenly found themselves free to communicate with the universe again. The Zephyrian command ship was falling apart around Jake. He made his way back to his experimental vessel, but he knew there was not enough time to escape before the structure collapsed. Then Kate Walker's voice came over his communication system. "Commander Martinez, grab onto something solid." Kate had positioned her ship directly below the command ship and was using her tractor beam to pull Jake's vessel out of the collapsing structure. It was a maneuver that required perfect timing and incredible skill. Jake's ship shot out of the crystal wreckage just as the command ship exploded in a shower of rainbow light. The explosion was beautiful and terrible, marking the end of the Zephyrian Empire. That was cutting it close, Jake said as his ship stabilized. That was human, Kate replied. 3 hours later, Jake, Kate, Amy, and Ben were reunited aboard the International Space Station. Earth was free, and so were dozens of other worlds across the galaxy. The Zephyrians sent one final message before they retreated to their home system. You have unleashed chaos upon the galaxy. The order we maintained is broken. Jake looked out at the stars, which now seemed brighter and more welcoming than ever before. Good, he said. Order is overrated. President Rodriguez contacted them from Earth with news that was both wonderful and overwhelming. The freed civilizations are trying to contact us, she reported. We're receiving messages from species we never knew existed. Amy was monitoring the communications. They're all saying the same thing, she said with wonder. Thank you for asking the right questions. Jake realized that the Zephyrians had been wrong about humans. Yes, humans were dangerous to anyone who thought freedom should be controlled and curiosity should be contained. But humans were also the species that would free strangers they had never met simply because it was the right thing to do. What happens now? Ben asked. Jake looked out at the galaxy that was now open to exploration and discovery. Now, we find out what's really out there, without anyone telling us what we're allowed to see. The galaxy would never be the same. But then again, humans had never been content with leaving things the same. 5 years later, the Terran Alliance had become a beacon of freedom in the galaxy. Species that had been imprisoned for generations were now exploring the stars alongside. Humans, the Zephyrians, still existed, but they no longer tried to control other civilizations. They had learned that some cages could not be built strong enough to hold the human spirit.